My name is Dorothy. I'm 85 years old, and I've been living alone for 8 years now, ever since my dear Harold passed away to be with the Lord. Our house is in Lincoln Park, Chicago, on a quiet street where the oak trees still shade the sidewalks, and neighbors still greet each other with a sincere, "Good morning." It was shortly after Harold's passing that my daughter Claire showed up with a small box, from which came little whimpering sounds that sounded like a baby's cry. "Mom, you need some company," she said, handing me that little ball of brown and white fur that barely fit in both my hands. "This is Buddy, a Jack Russell Terrier. He'll be good for you. If you're enjoying this real and exciting story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any episodes." At first, I'll admit I was a bit annoyed. At 77 years old, I thought I was too old to take care of a dog. Buddy was about the size of a large cat, weighed only 8 kilograms, but had energy that seemed to come from a diesel engine. He ran all over the house, chewed on my favorite slippers, those fuzzy ones Harold gave me on our last wedding anniversary, and barked at any noise coming from the street. Good heavens, what a little troublemaker, I'd mutter, watching him drag my dust mop across the living room. But when night came and loneliness squeezed my chest, Buddy would climb onto the couch next to me, rest his warm little head on my leg, and I felt that maybe my daughter was right. The first few months were about mutual adaptation, me learning to share my routine with that furry four-legged tornado, and him learning he couldn't pee on the living room carpet, at least not where I could see it. Buddy had a strong personality. When he wanted something, he'd stare at me with those bright brown eyes, like he was hypnotizing a chicken in my childhood farmyard. Back in Iowa, the house routine took on new dimensions. At 6 in the morning, he was already awake, nudging me with his paw to go out to the backyard. After coffee, he'd drink warm milk from a blue bowl I bought especially for him. We'd walk to the little park on the corner. Buddy knew every tree, every post, every little spot where other dogs had been. It was like he was the neighborhood's private detective. "Dorothy, how does such a little dog have so much courage?" commented Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor, watching Buddy bark at a Rottweiler 3 times his size. "He has no sense of his own size, does he?" I'd laugh, but deep down I was beginning to notice something special about that little animal. Buddy didn't consider consequences when it came to protecting me. If someone approached the gate suspiciously, he'd transform into a true miniature lion. The mailman, poor thing, didn't even try to deliver mail through the slot anymore. He had to throw it over the fence. At night, after the 8 o'clock news, when I turned off the house lights, Buddy would do one final round. Yes, a round. He'd go to the front door, smell underneath it, then continue to the back door, check the windows, and only then come lie down in his bed next to mine. It was like he considered himself responsible for our security. "You're a good boy, Buddy," I'd whisper, scratching behind his ear, in the spot he liked most. "Mama's safe with you here." And that's how, without realizing it, that 8-kilogram dog became the center of my life. He wasn't just a pet. He was my companion, my confidant, my protector. When I talked to him about missing Harold, about worries of advancing age, about fear of getting sick and being a burden to the kids, Buddy would listen with the attention of an expensive therapist. The neighbors on the street were already used to our duo. Me, a little old lady with a cane and white hair always neatly arranged, and him, a furry torpedo that seemed to have swallowed a Duracell battery. "There go Dorothy and her bodyguard," joked Mr. Anderson, the owner of the corner bakery, every time we passed by to buy fresh dinner rolls. 8 years had passed since Buddy came into my life, and I could no longer imagine my routine without him. He knew my schedule better than I did, could tell when I was sad by the way I sighed, and had developed a 6th sense for dangerous situations that I was yet to discover. It was on a rainy Monday in March, when Chicago's spring was still rehearsing its first steps, that our quiet life would be tested in a way I never imagined possible. That would be the night when my little Buddy would show me that sometimes the size of one's heart is much more important than the size of one's body. The rain had been drumming on my house's roof since mid-afternoon that Monday. It was almost 10 at night when I turned off the television and began my usual routine, locking the doors, checking that the gas was turned off, drinking my chamomile tea with honey. Buddy had accompanied me in these nightly rituals for 8 years, but that night he was different. "What's wrong, boy?" I asked, seeing him standing in the living room, staring fixedly toward the front door. His ears were perked up, his posture rigid like a soldier on guard duty. Buddy was sniffing the air with an intensity I'd never seen before. I thought it might be because of the rain. Some dogs get anxious during storms, right? I went to the living room window and peeked through the lace curtain my mother had made over 50 years ago. The street was empty, lit only by the yellowish streetlights that the city never remembered to replace. The fat raindrops formed small rivers in the gutters, and the wind swayed the branches of the oak tree in Mr. Johnson's yard, my neighbor to the right. "Come here, Buddy. Everything's normal," I called, patting my thigh lightly. But he didn't move. He stayed there like a statue of a guard dog, muscles tense under his brown and white coat. That's when I heard it, a subtle noise, almost imperceptible, amid the sound of the rain. It was like someone was tampering with the back gate that led to the yard. My heart jumped. "Must be the wind," I murmured to myself, but a strange sensation took hold of my chest. Are you enjoying following this real story? Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this exciting adventure. Buddy began moving toward the kitchen, where the back door was. His steps were silent, calculated like those of a wild feline. I had never seen my little dog behave this way. Usually he was all agitation and barking, but now he seemed to have transformed into something primitive, instinctive. "Buddy, come back here," I whispered, but he completely ignored me. He continued his walk to the kitchen, and I followed him, gripping my cane firmly. At 85, my hearing wasn't what it used to be, but Buddy had young ears. If he was worried, maybe there really was something wrong. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the hallway light. Buddy positioned himself right in front of the back door, crouched as if about to pounce, and began making a low growl I had never heard come from his throat. It was a guttural, primitive sound that reminded me of the wolf documentaries I watched on National Geographic. My first reaction was to turn on the kitchen light, but something stopped me. An inner voice, perhaps the same intuition that made me wake up 5 minutes before the alarm clock rang, told me not to do it. I remained in the shadows, watching my little guardian prepare for something I still didn't fully understand. That's when I heard it again. The metallic noise, clearer this time. Someone was definitely tampering with the back door lock. My blood ran cold. It was 10:15 on a rainy Monday night, and someone was trying to break into my house. I thought about calling the police, but my cell phone was on the nightstand next to the bed, in the bedroom. The landline was in the living room. To reach either one, I'd have to pass through the kitchen, and that might make noise. Buddy seemed to have read my thoughts. He looked at me for a second as if telling me, "Stay there, Mom. I'll handle this." The noise at the lock intensified. Whoever was on the other side of the door was using some kind of tool, probably a crowbar or a large screwdriver. I knew these sounds because my late husband Harold had been a locksmith for 40 years, and I'd often seen him open stuck doors with similar techniques. Buddy remained in his attack position but didn't bark. It was as if he knew that surprise would be his greatest weapon. I was impressed by my little companion's strategic intelligence. He wasn't just a pampered house pet. He was a born defender, with sharp instincts that 8 years of comfortable living hadn't managed to dull. The lock gave way. I heard the distinctive click of the door opening slowly. My heart was beating so hard, I was sure anyone within 50 yards could hear it. I gripped my cane tightly, not for support, but as a possible defense weapon. A dark figure slipped through the half-open door. It was a tall man, much taller than me, wearing a hooded jacket that dripped rainwater. He carried a small flashlight in one hand and a long tool in the other, probably the crowbar he'd used to force the lock. The intruder took 2 steps into my kitchen, directing the beam of light around, trying to orient himself in the environment. That's when Buddy acted. I never thought an 8-kilogram animal could move with such speed and determination. Buddy leapt like a guided missile, aiming directly at the man's legs. The bark he let out at that moment had nothing to do with the cute little yelps I was used to hearing. It was a war cry, a primal scream that echoed through the entire kitchen. The man was so startled that he dropped both the flashlight and the crowbar on the kitchen floor. "What the hell?" he shouted, trying to get away from that small fury who was now attached to the hem of his pants, shaking his whole body with his teeth buried in the fabric. It was at that moment that I understood my life was about to change forever, and that my little buddy was much braver than any of us could have imagined. What happened in the next few minutes was something I'll never forget for the rest of my days. Buddy had transformed into something I never imagined possible. My gentle little dog, who played with tennis balls and slept on my lap while watching TV, was now a miniature war machine. The intruder tried to kick Buddy away, but my little guardian was too fast. Every movement the man made was anticipated by canine instinct. When he raised his right leg to kick, Buddy would release the pants and attack the left leg. When the burglar tried to bend down to grab the flashlight that had fallen, Buddy would jump toward his hands, preventing any movement. "Get off! Get off me, you crazy dog!" the man yelled, and that's when I could see his face for the first time. He was young, probably about 30, strong, with a small scar on his forehead. He had a scraggly beard and small, nervous eyes. He must have weighed about 90 kilograms, maybe more. In any normal situation, it would be a completely unequal fight. But Buddy wasn't fighting normally. He had instinctively discovered the tactic any self-defense expert would recommend: mobility and persistence. He never stayed still long enough to be caught, but also never gave the intruder a break. You're witnessing a real and exciting story. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to follow more incredible accounts like this one. I remained standing at the kitchen entrance, holding my cane, in a mixture of terror and fascination. Part of me wanted to yell at Buddy to stop, afraid the man would hurt him. But another part, a part I didn't know existed, was rooting for my little hero. The burglar was getting more and more desperate. His jacket was torn in several places, and I could see scratches on his hands and arms. Buddy wasn't just biting. He was using his claws, too, scratching everything he could reach. It was strategic, calculated fury. "Why don't you just get out of here?" the man shouted, now clearly afraid. "It's just a dog." But it wasn't just a dog. It was Buddy, my 8-year protector, who had grown up in that house, who knew every corner, every piece of furniture, every sound. He was defending his territory and his family. Me. The fight intensified when the intruder tried to head toward the living room, probably looking for an escape route through the front door. Buddy realized the intention and cut him off, positioning himself strategically between the man and the exit. That's when I understood something extraordinary. My dog wasn't just attacking randomly. He had a plan. The man stumbled over one of the kitchen table chairs, staggered, and fell to his knees. Buddy took advantage of the opportunity and jumped toward his face. I heard a scream of panic that made the hair on my arms stand up. They were screams of genuine terror. "Stop! Stop it!" the intruder begged, trying to protect his face with his arms. But Buddy continued his relentless attack, growling like a wild animal. That's when I made a decision. I walked to the kitchen table, grabbed my cast-iron pot, the one that weighed about 3 kilograms, and that my mother had given me when I got married, and banged it against the wall with all my strength. The noise echoed through the entire house. "That's right, Buddy! Show this lowlife who's boss in this house!" I shouted, surprising myself with the authority in my voice. The effect was instantaneous. The man looked at me, saw the pot in my hand, then looked at Buddy, who continued growling like a furry demon, and something in his eyes changed. It was pure panic. "This old lady is crazy," he muttered, "and this dog is possessed." Buddy took advantage of the distraction and made one last charge, this time aiming at the intruder's stomach. The man doubled over, groaning in pain. He took advantage of a moment when Buddy stepped back to breathe and ran toward the back door. "Don't come back here, you scumbag!" I yelled, banging the pot against the wall again. "And if you do come back, my dog will eat you alive." The burglar stumbled at the door, knocked over a plant pot I had placed in the laundry area, and ran out into the rain. I heard the sound of his footsteps moving away quickly, splashing through puddles in the yard. Buddy ran to the door, barking with all his might, as if he were shouting, "And don't come back!" Then he stood there, panting, tongue hanging out, looking at me as if asking, "How'd I do, Mom?" I dropped the pot on the floor. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't hold it anymore, and knelt down to pet my hero. "Buddy, my brave boy," I whispered, hugging him tightly. "You saved Mama." He licked my face, wagging his tail with pride. It was like he knew exactly what he had just done. He was no longer the pampered little dog who slept on the couch. He was my protector, my guardian, my little 8-kilogram warrior who had made a 90-kilogram man run away. At that moment, still kneeling on the kitchen floor, hugging Buddy, I realized that some lessons about courage have nothing to do with physical size. They have to do with the size of one's heart and the strength of the love we feel for those we want to protect. After the intruder ran away, I sat on the kitchen floor for a few minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Buddy remained at the back door, alert, ears perked up, as if he were still on guard duty. My heart was beating so hard, it felt like it was going to burst out of my mouth. "Calm down, Dorothy," I told myself. "You need to call the police and notify the kids." I got up slowly, leaning on my cane, and went to the living room to get the phone. My legs were shaking so much I had to sit in Harold's armchair to dial the police station number. While waiting for someone to answer, Buddy came to me and put his head on my knee, as he always did when he sensed I was nervous. "Chicago Police Department." "Good evening," said a voice on the other end of the line. "Good evening. This is Dorothy from Oak Street in Lincoln Park. A man tried to break into my house a little while ago. Are you all right, ma'am? Is the intruder still on the premises?" "No, he ran away. My dog chased him off." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Excuse me, ma'am. Your dog?" I realized how that must sound. "Yes, he's a Jack Russell Terrier. Small but very brave. He attacked the burglar and the man ran away." "I understand. We'll send a patrol car over there. Can you wait? And please, don't touch anything the intruder might have left behind." I then remembered the crowbar the man had dropped in the kitchen, along with the flashlight. He left the tools he used to break the lock. They're here in the kitchen. After hanging up with the police, I called my daughter Claire. It was almost 11 at night, but I knew she'd still be awake. She'd always had insomnia. "Hello, Mom. Everything okay? It's very late for you to be calling." "Claire, something happened here at the house." I told her the whole story, from the moment Buddy started acting strange until the intruder's escape. I heard my daughter go silent for a few seconds. "Mom, are you really okay? You didn't get hurt? And Buddy? Is this story impressing you? Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any detail of this real and exciting adventure." "We're fine, honey. Buddy is here next to me, proud as a peacock. He seems to know he's a hero." "Mom, I'm coming over right now. I'll be there in half an hour." "You don't need to, dear. The police are already on their way, and everything's under control." "Under control nothing. You're 85 years old and just went through an attempted break-in. I'm sleeping over tonight." There was no point in arguing. I'd known my Claire since she was born. When she decided something, there was no force on earth that would make her change her mind. I hung up the phone and looked at Buddy, who was now lying on the living room rug, but still alert. "You caused quite a stir, you know," I told him, scratching behind his ear. "Now everyone's going to come here to see if we're okay." The police arrived 15 minutes later. They were 2 officers, one older, about 50, and another young one who couldn't be more than 25. Buddy barked when they knocked on the door, but it was a different bark, a warning, not an attack. "Good evening, Mrs. Dorothy. I'm Sergeant Williams, and this is Officer Martinez. Can you tell us exactly what happened?" I repeated the whole story, showing them the broken back door, the crowbar, and flashlight the intruder had left behind. The officers examined everything carefully, took photos, and made notes. "And this is the famous hero?" asked the sergeant, pointing to Buddy. "This is Buddy, 8 kilograms of pure courage," I replied proudly. Officer Martinez crouched down to pet Buddy, who accepted the affection but maintained the dignified posture of someone who had just completed an important mission. "Mrs. Dorothy, you were very lucky. There's been a series of break-ins in the neighborhood in recent weeks. Usually the criminals target homes of elderly people living alone. They study the routine, know the schedules." I felt a chill run down my spine. "You mean he might come back?" "It's unlikely. From the description you gave us, he got quite a scare. But we'll increase patrols on the street, and we recommend you install an alarm system." Claire arrived shortly after the police left. She entered the house like a hurricane, hugging me and checking that I didn't have any injuries, then knelt down to hug Buddy. "You're a hero, Buddy. A real hero," she told him, and for the first time I saw tears in her eyes. If something had happened to Mom. But nothing happened, dear. Buddy took care of everything. We spent the rest of the night in the living room, talking. Claire made tea for both of us, and Buddy got a special treat she had brought in her purse. Those expensive meat cookies he loved, but that I only bought on special occasions. "Mom, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time you considered moving to a smaller, safer apartment." "Claire Marie," I interrupted, using her full name as I did when she was a child, and misbehaved. "I'm not leaving this house. All my memories of your father are here. This is where we built our family. And besides," I looked at Buddy, who was lying at our feet. "Now I know I have the best security system in the world." My daughter smiled, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "At least let me hire a night watchman or install cameras." "We'll see," I replied, knowing that some changes might indeed be necessary. But one thing was certain. I wouldn't abandon my house because of a coward burglar who ran away terrified of an 8-kilogram dog. That night, when we finally went to sleep, Buddy didn't go to his bed as usual. He climbed onto my bed and lay right next to me, as if he knew I needed to feel his protective presence. "Thank you, my boy," I whispered in the darkness. "Thank you for taking care of Mama." He sighed, in that way dogs do when they're completely relaxed, and fell asleep. But I noticed that even while sleeping, his ears remained alert to any strange sound. The days following the incident were a real revolution in my quiet routine. The news that an 8-kilogram Jack Russell Terrier had chased off a 90-kilogram burglar spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Suddenly, my house became a mandatory stop in Lincoln Park. The next morning I woke up to the sound of voices on the street. When I looked out the window, I saw a small group of neighbors on the sidewalk, chatting animatedly and pointing toward my house. Mrs. Peterson, who lived in the blue house across from mine, waved when she saw me at the window. "Dorothy, how are you feeling? Where's Buddy? Where's the hero?" Buddy, as if he knew he was being called, appeared at the window next to me, chest puffed out with pride. The neighbors laughed and applauded, and he wagged his tail as if he were receiving the congratulations he deserved. During breakfast, my daughter Claire couldn't stop answering the phone. It was my other children, Robert, who lives in Denver, and Anne, who's in California. Grandchildren, nephews, friends from church, all wanting to know details of the story and make sure we were okay. "Mom, look at this," Claire said, showing me her cell phone. "I posted a photo of Buddy on the family WhatsApp, and it's already been shared 50 times. Everyone wants to meet Super Buddy. If you also want to know more incredible stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel." Around 10 in the morning, Mr. Anderson from the bakery arrived, carrying a bag of dinner rolls still warm and a huge bone for Buddy. "Dorothy, this is a special gift for our local hero," he said, handing the bone to Buddy, who received it with the dignity of a count receiving a decoration. You can't imagine how the story has already made its way around the neighborhood. Everyone's talking about the little dog who made a big thug run away. In the afternoon, I received the most unexpected visit of all, a reporter from WGN News, accompanied by a cameraman. Apparently, someone in the neighborhood had called the local newsroom, telling the story of the hero dog of Lincoln Park. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Dorothy. I'm Michael Thompson, reporter for WGN News. We'd love to talk with you about Buddy's story. May we come in?" I got so nervous I almost dropped the cup of tea I was drinking. Television? But why? It was just a dog defending his home. Mrs. Dorothy, this story is touching all of Chicago. An 8-kilogram Jack Russell Terrier facing a 90-kilogram man and winning. That's extraordinary. Buddy, always attentive to visitors, appeared in the living room wagging his tail. When he saw the camera, he stopped and posed naturally, as if he knew he was the protagonist of the story. The interview lasted almost an hour. I told all the details of the incident, and the reporter was impressed with the precision of my memory and with Buddy's poise, who throughout the entire filming stayed by my side, like a true television star. Mrs. Dorothy, what was the most frightening moment for you? The most frightening was realizing someone had entered my house. But when I saw Buddy act, a part of me felt safe. I knew he wouldn't let me down. And Buddy, how did he behave during the attack? He was strategic, you know. He didn't attack randomly. It seemed like he had a plan. He prevented the man from moving, from picking things up off the floor, from leaving through the front. It was impressive. During filming, Buddy demonstrated some of his abilities. When I asked him to guard, he immediately positioned himself between me and the camera, growling softly. When I said, "It's okay," he relaxed and went back to wagging his tail. "Impressive. He really understands protection commands," commented the reporter. After the TV crew left, I found myself thinking about how our life had changed in just 48 hours. From a quiet routine of a retired lady with her little dog, we had become a sort of local celebrity. Are you also impressed by this story? Then subscribe to our channel to follow more exciting accounts like this one. In the late afternoon, the phone rang again. It was Mrs. Rose, president of the Lincoln Park Neighborhood Association. "Dorothy, we're organizing an emergency meeting to discuss neighborhood security. Would you and Buddy like to participate? We want you to share your experience with the other residents." I accepted the invitation, of course. If our experience could help other seniors protect themselves better, it was worth sharing. That night, when Claire arrived for dinner with us, she had decided to stay a few more nights at home until I felt completely safe. She brought a surprise. "Mom, look what I found at the pet store," she said, showing me a new collar for Buddy. It was navy blue with a golden tag that read, "Buddy, official hero." Buddy spent the evening strutting around the house with his new collar, prouder than a peacock. He seemed to understand that he had earned special status in the family and the neighborhood. "Honey, sometimes I wonder if it wasn't destiny that brought Buddy into my life exactly for this moment," I commented, watching my little guardian examine his reflection in the hallway mirror. "Mom, I'm sure it was. Remember when I brought him, and you complained that you were too old to take care of a dog?" I laughed, remembering my initial resistance. "That's true, and now I can't imagine my life without him." That night, before going to sleep, I reflected on how pets are much more than simple companions. Buddy had revealed himself as a protector, a loyal friend, a family member who was willing to risk his own life for my safety. When I turned off the bedroom light, Buddy climbed onto my bed again. But this time, it was different. He positioned himself facing the door, like a soldier on guard, and only then lay down. Even in the darkness, I knew he would remain alert to any suspicious sound. "Sleep well, my hero," I whispered, petting his head. "Tomorrow we'll have another day together." And for the first time since the incident, I slept deeply, knowing I was under the protection of the best security system money can't buy. The unconditional love of a faithful dog. 1 week after the incident, our life had taken on dimensions I never imagined possible. The WGN News report aired on the local evening news, and suddenly Buddy and I became a small sensation in Chicago. The phone wouldn't stop ringing with people wanting to know the story of the hero dog. But most importantly, the impact our experience had on the community was extraordinary. The neighborhood association meeting filled the church hall on the corner. More than 80 people showed up to hear our story and discuss security measures for the area. "Dorothy," said Mrs. Rose at the microphone, "would you tell everyone about your experience?" I stood up, with Buddy at my side. He had become my official shadow, and told the whole story once more. But this time was different. I saw in people's faces a mixture of admiration, concern, and determination. what impresses me most," commented Mr. Johnson, a 78-year-old retiree who lived 3 blocks from my house, "is that a small dog had more courage than many of us would have had." "It's not about courage, Mr. Johnson," I replied. "It's about love. Buddy protected me because he loves me, and that made me realize we need to protect each other because we're a community, an extended family." From that meeting came several initiatives: a WhatsApp group for quick communication between neighbors, voluntary night patrols, improvements in street lighting, and a self-defense course for seniors, taught by a retired police officer who lived in the neighborhood. Is this story touching your heart? Subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more inspirational stories like this one. But the most significant change happened at home. Claire, who for years had insisted I move to a smaller apartment, never brought up the subject again. On the contrary, she and my other children decided to invest in security improvements for the house: discrete cameras, motion sensors in the yard, and a new lock on the back door. "Mom, now we understand that this house isn't just the place where you live," Robert said during a call from Denver. "It's your home. It's where your memories are. It's where you feel complete. And with Buddy as your bodyguard, we know you're in good hands. Or should I say, good paws." Buddy, who was listening to the call on speakerphone, barked as if he were agreeing, making all of us laugh. The following days brought subtle but important changes to my routine. I started greeting more neighbors during morning walks, and they responded with genuine smiles and questions about my health. The support network that had always existed in the neighborhood was strengthened. Buddy changed too. He continued being the same playful and affectionate dog, but now carried special dignity. When we walked down the street, people would stop to greet him, and he received the honors with the elegance of a war veteran. One afternoon, while I was watering the plants in the backyard, I noticed Buddy doing his usual rounds around the corners of the house. But now his movements had a different purpose. It was no longer just canine curiosity. It was conscious patrol, systematic care for our security. "You've changed, my boy," I told him, and Buddy looked at me with those bright brown eyes, as if he understood perfectly what I was saying. 3 weeks after the incident, I received a letter that deeply moved me. It was from Sergeant Williams, the police officer who had handled our case. "Mrs. Dorothy, I'm pleased to inform you that your case helped in resolving a series of crimes in the area. Based on the description you provided and the evidence left by the intruder, the tools that Buddy made him abandon, we were able to identify and arrest the criminal. He confessed to attempting to break into other homes, but said he had never encountered such a fierce dog. You and Buddy not only defended yourselves, but helped protect other neighbors in the area. Congratulations on your example of courage." When I finished reading the letter, I hugged Buddy tightly. "You didn't just save me, my hero. You saved the whole neighborhood." That night, during dinner, Claire had brought a special chicken pot pie to celebrate the news. We reflected on how our experience had transformed into something much bigger than a simple domestic incident. "Mom, do you realize you've become an example for other seniors in the city?" Claire commented. "I've received messages from people we don't even know, saying that your and Buddy's story inspired them not to give up, not to be afraid to live." It was true. In recent weeks, I had received letters, calls, and visits from people who felt inspired by our story. Mrs. Maria, 82, decided to adopt a street dog. Mr. Franklin, a 79-year-old widower, returned to the morning walks he had abandoned out of fear. What an incredible story, isn't it? If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, do it now to follow more heart-touching stories. 1 month after the incident, my routine had found a new balance. I continued being the same Dorothy as always, but now with a different perspective on my own strength and on the transformative power of the experiences we live through. Buddy had also stabilized in his new role. He continued being my faithful and playful companion, but now carried the pride of someone who had fulfilled his most important mission, protecting the one he loves. During our morning walk that sunny Thursday, we stopped at the little park where Buddy used to play. He ran after a tennis ball as he always did, but every now and then he would stop and look around, checking that everything was okay with me. "Mrs. Dorothy," shouted a familiar voice. It was little Johnny, Mrs. Peterson's grandson, an 8-year-old boy who always asked to play with Buddy. "Can I pet the hero?" "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, watching Buddy run excitedly toward the child. While the two played on the grass, I thought about how life sometimes presents us with challenges that, at the moment, seem impossible to overcome, but it also offers us unexpected resources to face them. In my case, the resource was an 8-kilogram Jack Russell Terrier with a heart the size of the world. That experience taught me that courage has nothing to do with physical size or age. It has to do with love, determination, and the willingness to protect what we consider precious. Buddy protected me because he loves me, and I found strength I didn't know I had because I have something worth fighting for. My life, my home, my memories, my independence. This was one of the most touching stories we've ever told. If you were moved like we were, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with those you love most. Today, 6 months after that rainy March night, when I look at Buddy sleeping in his bed next to mine, I feel immense gratitude. Not just because he saved me from a burglar, but because he showed me that it's never too late to discover what we're capable of. Sometimes before going to sleep, I whisper to him, "Thank you, my little hero. Thank you for reminding me that the size of one's heart is always more important than the size of one's body." And Buddy, even while sleeping, slightly wags his tail, as if he knows that, together, we are invincible. Our story proves that true heroes come in all sizes, and that love has the power to transform us into much braver versions of ourselves. This little 8-kilogram dog didn't just scare off a 90-kilogram burglar. He transformed an 85-year-old woman into a source of inspiration for an entire community. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me forever. When we truly love, we're capable of extraordinary things, regardless of our size.